Welcome. This is a slow medieval sleep story. Nothing urgent will happen here. You may rest and let the story unfold gently. At the forest's edge, the village sat in stillness, positioned where gentle hills began their rise from the lowlands. Pine and damp earth scented the air constantly, a fragrance that never quite left this place. Centuries of wind and rain had worn the stone cottages smooth, their walls pressed close to one another in tight clusters. Time had darkened every wooden door. From the chimneys, smoke rose in lazy threads, appearing thin and pale where it met the early evening sky. Here, the pace of existence followed daylight's rhythm and the turning of seasons. Routine and patience guided everything. An unspoken agreement prevailed that haste served no purpose. Between the houses, the paths ran narrow and uneven, their surfaces softened by countless years of footfall. Often, those footsteps provided the only sound one might notice. The sun descended, and its light spread over the fields that lay beyond the village boundaries. It illuminated tall grasses and touched the simple fencing. The nearby stream caught the glow along its surface. Around stones that had occupied the stream bed longer than living memory could reach, the water flowed gently, never rushing. One by one, birds took their places in the trees for the night, their calls diminishing as evening grew deeper. The world appeared to be settling into rest, and the village joined that natural rhythm without any conscious effort. Earlier that day he had come on foot, his arrival marked by little ceremony. A worn pack constituted most of what he carried, along with the quiet burden that long travel leaves upon a person. Practical and plain, his clothes bore the dust of roads and showed the softening that comes from extended use. Nothing about his appearance called for special notice. He neither rushed his movements nor delayed them beyond necessity. Through the village, he moved as if the place were already known to him, as if settlements like this one had become familiar even before his feet touched their soil. The slow pace of his surroundings absorbed his presence easily. Near the square's edge, he stopped where a wooden well stood, sheltered by a simple roof of dark timber. Against the stone, the bucket rested with damp rope lying in loose coils beside it. From within the well, the sound of dripping water created a soft echo, steady and soothing. Setting down his pack, he stood in quietness and listened, permitting the stillness to gather around him. This moment offered comfort, standing without any expectation pressing upon him, free from urgency's demands. Not long afterward, she emerged from one of the nearby cottages, her steps measured and deliberate. Around her shoulders, a shawl hung loosely, its fabric showing the fade of many years, though it had been mended with care. Her hair had been tied back in a simple, practical manner, suited to daily labor. The dress she wore was modest, clean, and showed considerable wear. In her hands she held an empty vessel, her grip easy and relaxed, her eyes cast downward as she walked. Much like the village itself, haste played no part in her movement. Habit guided her rather than conscious thought. Approaching the well, she registered his presence only briefly in those first moments. Strangers passed through occasionally, though such occurrences were neither frequent nor particularly rare. She acknowledged him with quiet awareness, nothing beyond that, and moved closer to the stone rim. The rope held a familiar texture as her fingers worked it, lowering the bucket while the gentle creaking of wood and rope filled the space that existed between them. Speech came from neither of them. Breaking the silence seemed unnecessary. No discomfort existed in that quiet. It was simply there, present and accepted. When the bucket rose again, clear water filled it, the surface trembling briefly before it settled into calm. With care, she lifted it and set it to rest on the stone, then adjusted how she held the vessel she'd carried with her. His gaze touched upon the scene only briefly, respectfully, his attention soft and unfocused in the way one might observe the evening's general atmosphere rather than any specific person. The air surrounding them remained undisturbed by tension or by expectation's weight. A moment passed, and then he spoke, keeping his voice low and steady. Long hours of quiet travel and solitary contemplation had shaped how he formed his words. What he offered was simple and polite, amounting to little more than recognition of the place and the hour. Her response matched his tone, equally gentle, carrying the quality of someone who had practiced soft speech throughout most of her years. The exchange between them was brief and unremarkable in its content, yet it settled into the evening with the same ease as the fading light. For a short while longer they remained there, each occupied with their own small task, the space shared between them requiring no effort. Gold gave way to deep blue as the sky darkened by gradual degrees, and distant stars began appearing faint against the approaching night. From somewhere nearby came the soft sound of a door being closed. Someone lit a fire. The village released itself into nighttime. Lifting her now-filled vessel, she turned to depart, and he stepped aside without needing to think about it, creating room for her to pass. Only for a moment did their eyes meet, not in searching or questioning, but simply in mutual acknowledgement. No promise lived in that glance, no understanding had yet taken form. Only a quiet awareness existed, one that would persist longer than either might have anticipated. Back towards her home she walked, her footsteps fading into paths that held complete familiarity for her. By the well he stayed a moment longer, listening once more to the gentle sounds, water, wood, distant firelight. Without ceremony, the village accepted his presence, and night settled fully around them both, carrying forward the stillness of what had started without any announcement. Darkness deepened in slow progression, as if even night itself honored the village's particular rhythm. One by one, lanterns received their flame, warm light spilling gently onto the earth, pushing back shadows without any sense of rush. Within the cottages, voices stayed low and movements remained unhurried. Wood made quiet cracking sounds as it settled in the hearths, and the smell of burning logs escaped through the narrow gaps that existed beneath doors and windows. No demands arose for attention. All things simply carried on. Towards the village's far end, he secured lodging in a small house that stood somewhat separated from its neighbors. The roof sloped low and the walls possessed thickness and steadiness. Few words came from the man who owned it, who offered a resting place without inquiries, as though travelers represented just another natural element of the landscape. The room's simplicity spoke for itself. Straw and wool formed the bed, a wooden chair stood ready, and a table showed old knife marks and stains accumulated from countless meals. A small fire maintained its steady burn, light flickering against the stone surfaces. For some time he sat without motion, his attention given to the fire's sounds, to wind brushing the outer wall, to the faint indications of life settling towards sleep. His thoughts refused to race. Instead, they drifted freely. Already the road behind him seemed distant, its dust and demands softened by this present stillness. Places of this kind possessed the ability to quiet the mind, to remind the body of how rest should feel. In another part of the village, she progressed through routines that held complete familiarity. Water was set in its proper place, bread received careful wrapping, and tools found their way back to where they belonged. One motion followed the next without requiring thought, all of it shaped by years of endless repetition. The home she occupied with her family held modesty but also warmth, its walls containing the accumulated memory of voices, laughter, and quiet grief in equal measure. She attended to the fire, repositioning the logs to ensure heat would last until morning, then took a seat near the hearth with hands folded loosely in her lap. Without any particular direction, her thoughts wandered freely. The day had been ordinary, filled with the same small tasks that occupied most days. Yet something persisted at the edge of her awareness, subtle and resistant to definition. The stranger's presence by the well returned to her mind not as a question demanding answers, but as a sensation, similar to how an echo remains long after the original sound has faded. Nothing remarkable characterized him, nothing that should have demanded memory's attention, and yet she discovered herself recalling the calm quality of that shared silence. Time moved forward gently, the fire's brightness diminished. Sleep claimed the village. Quietly, morning made its arrival, first announced by pale light that crept along the horizon's line, then by the soft stirring of birds settling among the trees. Low to the ground, mist clung to its position, resting equally between houses and fields, blurring where edges met and softening all shapes, fresh and cool. The air carried within it the promise of another day that would unfold without hurry. Early rising came to him not from established habit, but from a natural state of readiness. Following a simple meal, he stepped through the door and drew the morning air deeply into his chest, allowing it to fill him completely. Different qualities appeared in the village during daylight, colors showing themselves as muted and honest, wear becoming visible yet somehow comforting. No performance existed here, no urgent need to present anything other than what truly was. Without selecting any particular destination, he walked, following paths that curved with gentle ease through the settlement. He moved past gardens just beginning their daily stirring, past doors that opened slowly, past figures emerging to welcome the new day. His movement matched what he'd shown the previous night, blending into the established rhythm rather than creating any disturbance. Already awake, she'd begun tending to the tasks that welcomed morning. Stepping outside, she felt the mist brush against her skin with cool lightness. For a moment she paused, listening, permitting the day to arrive fully before engaging with its demands. The village conveyed a sense of peace and settlement, as though nothing unexpected could possibly occur within its established bounds. Near the edge of the fields, where grass extended outward toward the forest, their paths intersected again. No planning had produced this meeting. It unfolded naturally, without intention guiding it. This time, awareness of one another arrived more quickly. Between them, a quiet recognition passed, subtle yet impossible to mistake. Once again, neither one hurried towards speech. Words came eventually, and they remained simple when they did. A greeting was offered, a comment about the morning was shared. The land and weather received acknowledgement. Soft and unassuming, their voices remained as though louder speech might create disturbance in the surrounding calm. No effort was made to impress, no attempt launched to shape the moment into something beyond what it naturally was. Side by side they stood for a time, their gaze directed across the fields. Slowly the mist lifted, bringing familiar shapes into view beneath it. From somewhere came the creaking of a cart moving along a distant path. Life resumed its steady forward motion. Only briefly did he speak of his travels, and he added no embellishment to what he shared. She listened not merely with curiosity, but with the quiet respect one gives to experiences that are shared without making demands. In the same manner, she spoke of the village, describing how its seasons progressed, what routines sustained it, how constancy defined it. Their words had not yet formed any bond, but they settled with comfort in the space between them. Eventually, the day's needs drew them in separate directions. She returned to her work's demands. He continued along the path before him. Neither looked back in the immediate moment, and yet both carried away with them the calm weight of the encounter, unspoken, undefined, and gently persistent. As days always had, this one unfolded, but beneath what appeared ordinary on the surface, something subtle had undergone a shift. Not a promise had formed, not an expectation had been created. Only the quiet beginning of familiarity existed, resting with patience, waiting for time to provide it with proper shape. Like a soft blanket, the afternoon settled over the village, offering warmth without heaviness, permitting each sound to remain clear and distinct. Without strain, work continued forward. Through familiar motions, hands moved, guided more by memory than by conscious thought. Time's passage went unnoticed, marked solely by the gradual shifting of light as it moved across stone and wood. For no one did the village alter its rhythm, and yet it welcomed all who moved through its daily patterns. Much of the day he spent in outdoor spaces, offering help where such help found quiet acceptance. Wood received his carrying labor, a loose fence received his repairs, and his listening exceeded his speaking. His presence generated no disruption. It felt natural, as if places like this had always known him, where effort maintained steadiness and conversation remained optional. Those who engaged him in speech discovered his manner to be calm and unassuming, his words selected with care, never released in haste. From a distance at first, she noticed him. Not through deliberate action, not with intent shaping her awareness, but with the same kind of noticing one gives to weather or to light. He appeared in her day's periphery, crossing a path here, standing near a doorway there, working alongside others in another moment. With each occurrence, the sense of familiarity expanded slightly, resembling a sound that becomes part of the background through sufficient repetition. As the sun leaned into its westward descent, she found herself near the village edge once more, gathering what evening would require. Wide and open, the fields stretched away, their colors gaining depth under the changing light. She paused, taking a moment of rest, permitting the quiet to gather around her. There behind her, she heard footsteps, unhurried and light in their approach. Without any intention to interrupt, he approached, stopping where respectful distance suggested. Slowly the moment unfolded, carrying no surprise within it. When she turned, recognition was there again, gentle and without force. This time, before words arrived, the silence lasted longer, not because either person withheld them, but because necessity didn't call for them. When speech came, the conversation found its natural path, much like water discovering where to flow. Simple questions about the land came from him, about the seasons, about how the year's turning changed the village. Without adding embellishment, she answered, her voice maintaining steadiness, rooted in experience rather than in imagination. She spoke of winters that arrived early and extended their stay, of summers that delivered work alongside quiet satisfaction, of springs that returned life to fields that had rested beneath accumulated snow. His attention remained on her words, not filling the spaces that existed between them, permitting each pause to remain intact. In exchange, he shared fragments drawn from his own life, offering them not as impressive stories, but as quiet truths, requiring no special attention. He spoke of roads that stretched in endless forward progression, of nights passed beneath skies that remained open, of places that held familiarity temporarily and then disappeared behind him. No longing colored his voice, only acceptance of what had been. As light continued its softening, shadows lengthened their reach across the grass. The air grew cooler, bringing with it the scent of earth and leaves. Neither seemed to possess eagerness for departure. Their stillness felt complete, remaining unbroken despite time's passage. Eventually, the evening meal came into her mention, along with the need to return. With a nod, he acknowledged it, understanding without experiencing disappointment. Slowly they parted, ceremony playing no role, each turning back towards where the village waited. No promise passed between them, no arrangement received establishment. And yet the sense of something unfinished remained present, resting with gentleness beneath the surface. That night, sleep arrived easily for both. The day had required no effort beyond what had been given freely. Dreams, if they made any appearance at all, were soft and lacking in distinct form, shaped more by quiet moments than by vivid imagery. Once more the village rested beneath the stars, unchanged and yet subtly altered by what had begun taking shape within it. As it always did, morning followed, calm and predictable in its arrival. The routines resumed their familiar patterns, but now they carried a faint undercurrent of awareness running through them. Paths seemed to hold slightly less distance. Time felt less weighted by emptiness. Encounters, when they occurred, lingered with just a little more duration than before. Though never planned, their meetings increased in frequency. Near the well, they crossed paths along the fields beside where the forest began its edge. Each time the ease that existed between them deepened, constructed not from words alone but from silence they'd shared. They learned how one another's footsteps sounded, the rhythm that each person's presence carried. Comfort lived in this gradual knowing. No questions pressed forward, demanding answers. No expectations formed themselves with excessive speed. Forward the days moved, carrying with them the slow, steady growth of familiarity, patient and unremarkable, yet quietly possessing endurance. And within the village's steady life, something new established its roots, unseen but firmly grounded, waiting for time to grant permission for its growth. One day began folding into the next, each maintaining the same calm contours, each moving forward without creating sharp edges in their passage. As it always had, the village lived its life, guided by the interplay of light and season, by habit's pull and quiet endurance. Yet, small shifts occurred within that familiar flow, subtle enough that most wouldn't notice their presence, though present they remained nonetheless. A gentle pattern emerged from their encounters. Neither one sought the other deliberately, yet surprise no longer accompanied their meetings. What began as a nod evolved into a proper greeting. What started as a brief exchange transformed into a moment they occupied together. Comfortable silence grew between them, no longer something to move through quickly, but something worth remaining within. They discovered how to stand in shared space without needing to fill it with words. Longer than his first intentions had suggested, he began remaining in the village. The road's quiet insistence no longer pulled at him with the same force. Without urgency, each morning made its arrival, and he accepted it as it presented itself. Work existed to be done, and he did it with willingness, offering no complaints. To the place's tasks, his hands adapted with ease, and the people accepted his presence without raising question. Without engaging in reflection, she observed this development, simply permitting it to become integrated into her awareness. The stranger no longer carried that quality of unfamiliarity. His movements had acquired familiarity. His voice became recognizable even before she turned to see him. Comfort lived in that familiarity, steady and grounding in nature, resembling the presence of something that had always been known yet never received a name. As the air cooled one evening and the village made its preparations for rest, they discovered themselves walking the same path in the direction of the forest edge. In quietness, the trees stood, their branches receiving soft stirring from the evening breeze. Through the leaves, light filtered down, broken into gentle fragments. An easy rhythm developed between their footsteps, unplanned, yet achieving natural alignment. More speech came from them that evening, though haste still played no role. Shaped by thought rather than impulse, words arrived slowly. Her childhood became her topic, along with growing up contained within the same boundaries, with knowing each path and field as intimately as one knows their own body. No regret colored her voice, only acceptance of what had been. The village had performed its shaping work upon her, and she had grown to fill that shape completely. With steady attention, he listened, then offered more of himself in exchange. Beginnings and endings that blurred into one another became his subject, along with places that provided shelter without offering permanence, with the quiet loneliness that arose not from solitude itself, but from never remaining long enough to be truly known. Calm remained in his voice, but beneath it lived a depth, a weight that time and distance had shaped. Beneath the trees, they paused, the forest breathing in quietness around them. Neither one felt immediate need to continue moving. The moment achieved its own holding, unpressured and complete in itself. Gradual fading claimed the light, transforming green into shadow, warmth into cool stillness. Together they turned back towards the village eventually, walking side by side without requiring thought. No declaration had been made, no understanding received voice, yet something had undergone another shift, settling into deeper territory than before. Between them, the space felt smaller now, not through reduction of distance, but through expansion of awareness. That night brought rest to the village, as it always had. Unaware of the subtle changes occurring within its boundaries, fires released their brightness, doors received closure, With softness, sleep arrived. Through the days that came after, their presence in one another's lives became quieter still, drawing less notice, yet maintaining greater constancy. Without discussion, they shared tasks. Without intention, they exchanged glances. Each came to recognize the other as landscape's component, steady and reliable in nature. No rush existed toward anything beyond what already was. At its own pace, time moved, and they granted it permission to do so. The connection taking form between them received its shape, not from sudden feeling, but from repetition, from hours shared and understanding left unspoken. Its growth proceeded not upward, but inward, deepening in slow progression, anchoring itself with firmness in the calm foundation that the days provided. Without clear boundaries, the days carried on, each one easing its way into the next as though time itself had undergone a softening of its edges. Change received no announcement in the village, yet everything underwent slow shifts all the same. Differently, the light arrived in the mornings, lingering with slightly more duration along the paths, resting itself against the stone walls, before moving onward. With deeper quiet, the evenings settled, the air carrying a stillness that felt settled rather than bearing the quality of emptiness. Not as a guest, not yet as anything receiving clear definition, but as a presence that no longer maintained separation. This was how he remained, part of the daily rhythm his movements had become. Familiar on the paths were his footsteps, recognizable even from a distance was his silhouette. When he passed, the village people no longer took notice, which meant his arrival had truly been completed. With the same calm steadiness she always had, she moved through her days, yet beneath it now lived a subtle awareness, a gentle attentiveness that accompanied her from one task to the next. When she saw him, the feeling was neither surprising nor expected. It simply felt right, as though into this shape the world had arranged itself naturally. Without naming it as such, they spent time together. Side by side they worked sometimes, in silence they walked sometimes, of nothing more than what lay directly before them they spoke sometimes. Beyond the moment their words did not seek meaning. Interpretation their silences did not demand. Into memory each encounter settled quietly, leaving behind a sense of ease rather than anticipation's weight. Along a familiar path they walked together one evening, as the village grew still and light faded in slow progression from the sky. Dark and calm nearby, the forest stood, its presence steady and resistant to change. Cool the air was, carrying within it the scent of earth and wood smoke. Without effort, their steps achieved matching rhythm. Where the path widened, they paused, neither turning back nor moving forward with immediacy. Gently the moment held them, unremarkable in every outward way, yet quietly full. No need existed to speak of what this was becoming, no need to question where it might lead. In what already existed, the understanding between them rested. With the same unhurried motion, they eventually turned back, as though nothing had occurred beyond another shared walk, another ordinary evening. And yet into place, something had settled, deep and steady, not demanding attention's focus, but impossible to undo. With softness, night came, fires released their brightness, doors received closure. Without resistance, sleep arrived. Within the village's calm, within the steady unfolding that the days provided, a connection continued its formation, not announced, not hurried, not named, but patiently rooted in time shared, stillness shared, and the quiet certainty that familiarity brings. Without sharp beginnings, the mornings now came gently into the village slowly, light filtered, touching rooftops and paths in no particular order, as though selecting where to rest. A quiet freshness the air carried, cool, but not achieving coldness, and soft and sparse were the sounds of life waking. Nothing hurried the day into its motion. More of these mornings they found themselves sharing, though never through arrangement. Near the well they crossed paths sometimes, along the edge of the field sometimes simply standing nearby as the village stirred into wakefulness. Between one another their presence no longer required acknowledgement. Settled it felt, established, like something that had maintained presence always. Less of the road he spoke now. When he did, distance was absent from it. Absent was the sense that it waited for him just beyond where the horizon lay. Close to the present his words stayed. To the land existing beneath his feet, to the work that the day brought. Undefined the future remained, and neither of them seemed to find trouble in that. In the same quiet way she always had, she listened, attentive without carrying expectation. By continuity, her life had been shaped by the steady return that seasons and routines provided. Yet now, within that constancy, an added layer of awareness existed. A sense that within her days, something had deepened, not changed, but grown more complete in nature. As time's passage occurred, they began sharing longer stretches together. Without notice, walks extended themselves. Side by side, tasks reached completion. Comfortably, silences stretched, uninterrupted by speech's requirement. So natural the rhythm between them grew that it ceased feeling like something newly formed. Beneath a tree at the edge of the fields, they rested one afternoon, its branches casting soft shade across the ground beneath. Still the air was, the sky pale and open in its stretch above them. For a long while, neither spoke. Behind them, the village lay, distant but present in quality, and in quietness nearby, the forest stood. Against the trunk he leaned back, eyes receiving closure, breathing slow and maintaining evenness. A short distance away she sat, hands resting with looseness in her lap, watching how the light moved through the leaves above. Nothing the moment asked of them. On its own, it existed fully. Then existed a sense of shared ease that reached beyond simple companionship's boundaries. Not a sudden realization, not a spoken truth, but a quiet recognition that being together required effort's absence. As natural as standing still it felt, as resting, as permitting time's passage. Without discussion, they eventually rose and returned toward where the village waited. With ease, their steps aligned, guided by habit rather than thought's direction. As it always did, the day continued, but the calm between them lingered, carried forward into the evening's arrival. Once more night fell, steady and unremarkable in character. Gently sleep came, shaped by the quiet repetition of days that asked little and offered much. And within that stillness, the connection between them continued its deepening. Not through moments of intensity, but through presence, through hours shared, through the steady unfolding that ordinary life provided. Both of them the village held, unchanged, and yet subtly transformed by what had taken root within its boundaries, growing with patience, without haste, content to exist exactly as it was. With the same gentle consistency, the days carried onward, each one unfolding without demand's presence, without surprise's arrival. As it always had, the village moved, guided by light, weather, and habit's influence. Yet within that steady motion, their shared presence had become a quiet constant, something so natural that against the background of daily life it no longer stood out. Without intention, they began anticipating one another. To the same place, a path chosen without thought led them. A moment shared, a pause in work became. No need existed to seek. Meeting simply achieved occurrence. Beneath conscious thought, their awareness of each other settled, like the steady knowledge one has of the ground beneath one's feet. Unhurried, conversations remained. Of the past they spoke sometimes, not in detail, but in fragments that memory, rather than story, had shaped. Places that no longer called to him he mentioned, moments that had passed and settled with quietness behind him. Years that had shaped her she spoke of, people and routines that had formed her day's structure. With a regret, neither spoke. What had been received acknowledgement then was allowed to rest. Nothing at all, they said often. With ease, silence accompanied them now, filling the space without carrying weight, meaning it carried without needing words' assistance, offering rest rather than distance's creation. In those moments, further slowing seemed to claim the world as though responding to their stillness. Along a familiar path they walked together one evening, as dusk settled with gentleness over the village, the sky deepening into muted tones of blue and gray. Cool and calm the air was, carrying within it the faint scent of smoke and earth. Unhurried their steps were, aligned by habit rather than intention's guidance. Near the edge of the fields they paused, watching as quiet slipping claimed the last light. Before them the land rested, unchanged and enduring in nature. No urgency existed to speak, no sense that into something else the moment needed shaping. Enough it was to stand there, the quiet shared between them. Slightly toward her he turned then, not with sudden motion, but with the same gentle awareness that had guided all their movements' progression. Close his presence felt, steady, familiar in quality. Where she was, she remained, her attention shifting with naturalness toward him, her expression calm, open in character. Nothing received voice, nothing needed to be spoken. Without resolution the moment passed, without declaration, and yet behind it left a deeper sense of understanding. What they shared no longer belonged solely to chance meetings or paths shared. Into something more stable it had settled, more assured, though still unnamed it remained. As night fully arrived, they returned to the village, the first stars faint in their presence above them. With softness doors closed, fires released their brightness. As it always did, sleep came, slow and unresistant. Within the night's quiet, within the steady rhythm that the continuing days provided, their connection remained, growing not through intensity but through continuity, through stillness shared, through the calm certainty of being present together. And so onward time moved, carrying them forward with gentleness, without urgency, allowing what had begun so quietly to deepen further, shaped by patience and the unremarkable beauty that ordinary days possess. With quiet certainty forward the weeks moved, marked only by subtle changes that felt more sensed than seen in character. Its angle across the village, the light shifted, lingering differently on stone and wood, resting with longer duration in some places, passing with greater quickness in others. New tones the air carried, cooler in the morning's arrival, softer in the evening's presence. Nothing announced itself. Everything simply became. To sharing the same spaces for longer stretches of time, they grew accustomed. What had once been brief crossings transformed into hours spent nearby, working or resting in parallel motion. No need existed to coordinate, no need to decide upon action. Naturally, their presence aligned, as though guided by an understanding that neither had consciously formed. Without effort, he found himself noticing small details about her. The way she paused before allowing speech, permitting thought to settle first. The steadiness her movements carried, unbroken by haste's intrusion. The calm attention she gave to even the simplest tasks' completion. No urgency these observations carried, no desire to act upon their presence. They simply existed, quietly enriching his awareness of the day's passage. She, in her turn, grew familiar with his voice's sound before the words themselves arrived, with the rhythm his steps carried in approaching, with the way he stood when listening's state claimed him. Comfort lived in this recognition, a sense of reliability that required promise's absence. Grounding, it felt, like knowing the path home, even in low lights conditions. As clouds drifted in slow motion overhead one afternoon, together near the village edge they worked. Cool the air was, firm the ground beneath their feet. Into an easy pattern their movements fell, each adjusting with instinct to the other. No instruction received giving, no need for explanation existed. Quietly, the work progressed, efficiently and without strain's presence. When pause came to rest where they were, they remained, sitting side by side, watching the clouds' passage. Wide and open, the sky felt above them, carrying a calm that settled with gentleness into the space they shared. For a long while neither spoke, not empty the silence was. Full it felt, complete in nature. In that stillness, a deeper awareness achieved emergence. Not sudden, not overwhelming, but steady and clear in character. A source of rest rather than effort being together had become, no longer as something new, but as something necessary in its quiet way. The presence of the other registered. As toward evening the day drew, they rose and returned toward the village once more. Unhurried, their steps remained, familiar their path. Comforting the routine of the return felt a gentle closing that the day received. Again, night settled, bringing with it the same calm it had always carried. Softly sleep arrived, shaped by the unbroken flow of days that asked little and offered quiet fulfillment. Within that rest, the connection between them continued its deepening, anchored with firmness in patience and presence. Them forward time did not press. Where they were, it held them, allowing the bond forming between them to grow at its own pace, unforced and steady, woven with seamlessness into the rhythm that village life provided. Into deeper familiarity, the village's rhythm settled, carrying them both within it without resistance's presence. No longer distinct or separate, days felt. Gently they blended, one into the next, forming a continuous stretch of quiet time that required no attention to measure its passage. Forward life moved without markers, guided only by light, rest, and simple need. Small routines they began sharing without ever reaching agreement upon them. Expected without being planned, a morning pause near the well became, without discussion, an evening walk along the same path achieved happening. Not intentional these moments felt, inevitable they felt, shaped by comfort rather than choice's direction. How easily his presence fit beside hers he noticed, how little adjustment it demanded. No sense of intrusion existed, no need to hold back or step forward in motion. Like standing within a space already prepared it felt, being near her, one that asked nothing more than presence's offering. Into him the calm of it settled, easing the restlessness that had once followed him from place to place in its pursuit. A similar steadiness taking hold within her days, she felt. A quiet depth to familiar routines, the constancy of his presence added, as though the same tasks now carried a softer weight in their performance. From her life, it did not distract her, time spent near him. Instead, it seemed to anchor it more firmly, grounding her in the present moment's occupation. Near a low fire outside one of the cottages, they sat together one evening, as the village prepared for rest. With gentleness, the flames moved, casting slow shadows across the ground beneath. Cool but comfortable the air was, the quiet broken only by the soft sound that burning wood produced. For a long time neither spoke. The fire she watched, its steady movement calming and predictable in nature. Nearby he sat, his posture receiving relaxation, his breathing maintaining slowness. Complete the shared stillness felt, as though nothing more could receive, adding to it without its balance receiving disruption. At some point, slightly closer, he shifted, not deliberately, not with intention's guidance, but as one might adjust to remain warm in temperature. Small the movement was, unremarkable in character. Away she did not move. Natural the closeness felt, unspoken, accepted without thought's requirement. That way they remained until dimming claimed the fire, until around them the night deepened. When eventually they rose to return indoors, no acknowledgement existed of what had passed between them. None received need. Into the flow of their shared time, the moment had settled quietly. That night sleep came with ease, untroubled by thought or anticipation's weight. As it always did, the world rested steady and unchanged on the surface level. Yet beneath that calm, further deepening, something had achieved. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but with the same patience that had guided everything between them so far in its progression. Beyond chance, beyond routine, the connection they shared had moved into a quiet certainty that did not yet require words for its expression. Onward time continued, unhurried in motion, carrying them gently forward within the enduring calm that the village provided, allowing what had formed between them to grow in silence, shaped by presence, trust, and the steady unfolding that ordinary days bring. Quieter still the days grew, as though into a deeper form of rest the village itself had settled. Sounds achieved softening. Movements underwent slowing. Even conversations seemed to arrive with greater gentleness, shaped by long pauses and unhurried thought. Forward, nothing pressed. Away, nothing pulled. Without defining it, they continued sharing time. Without speaking at all, they worked near one another some mornings, each absorbed in simple tasks, aware of the other only through presence's quality. A few quiet words they exchanged other days, enough to acknowledge the moment, not enough to shape it into something else. Natural, the balance between silence and speech felt effortless in its achievement. That near her, the calm he experienced carried into the rest of his day, he found. No longer as far as once they had, his thoughts wandered. The restlessness that had followed him along roads and through unfamiliar places had undergone softening, losing its sharpness. Sufficient, it felt, being here, being present. A similar change within herself, she noticed. More grounded, the steady rhythm of her life felt, more whole in character. Warmer, the familiar paths seemed, fuller the evenings, though nothing outward had undergone change. No excitement existed, no anticipation in the usual sense's understanding. Instead, a quiet assurance existed that gently each day would unfold, as it always had in its pattern. Without destination, they walked together one late afternoon, as long across the village the light stretched. Naturally toward the fields, the path led them, then curved back again, as paths often achieve in their doing. Calm the air was, carrying the faint scent of grass and distant smoke within it. Slow their steps remained, unmeasured in their taking. Near a low rise in the land they stopped, where behind them the village could be seen resting. The fading light the rooftops caught, stone and wood glowing with softness before to shadow returning. Stillness the view invited, and without hesitation they accepted it. Close enough to feel her presence clearly now he stood, her quiet steadiness grounding the moment's existence. Not immediately toward him she turned, neither did he towards her. No acknowledgement the closeness required, simply it existed, calm and complete. After time's passage she spoke, her voice low and maintaining evenness, commenting on the evening's quality, on how gently the day had achieved its passing. He agreed, his reply simple, unadorned with elaboration. Not important the words were, what mattered was the shared understanding beneath them resting. There they remained until fully the light faded, until the air cooled, and with its familiar quiet signals, the village called them back. When to leave, they turned. Together they did so without discussion, their movements aligned as naturally as for some time now their steps had been. That night, once more beneath the stars, the village rested. Fires released brightness. With softness, doors closed. Without resistance, sleep arrived. And within that rest, within the steady unfolding of days that asked for nothing more than presence's offering, the bond between them continued its deepening, quietly, patiently, rooted, not in words or promises making, but in stillness shared, trust given, and the enduring calm that ordinary life provides. Through the passing days, its quiet the village held, steady and unchanged, as though within its bounds more slowly to move time itself had decided. At their usual pace, The familiar sounds of life continued, softened now by repetition's work. Footsteps on stone, the creak wood produces, the low murmur voices make, all blended into a single gentle presence that never demanded attention's focus. To ending their days near one another, they grew accustomed, not always together, not always apart in their positioning, but close enough that awareness lingered even when words did not. A shared pause evenings became a moment when the day's work settled and the world achieved its exhalation. Nearby they sat sometimes, they walked sometimes simply within the same quiet space they remained still. To define what was forming, he felt no urge. The need to understand or control it had never achieved a rival. What between them existed felt steady without explanation's requirement, supported by the calm that shared time provided. The sense of belonging he found here did not announce itself. Quietly it rested, deepening with each ordinary day's passage. With the same gentle certainty she always had, she moved through her routines, yet now a softness accompanied her steps. Another who moved at the same pace, who understood stillness's value. This presence added a quiet layer of comfort to her days. Her life did not undergo alteration. Into it, this presence settled. Near the edge of the square, they stood together one evening, as the air cooled and the village prepared for rest. Across the ground, a lantern cast a low, steady glow, illuminating the worn stone beneath where their feet rested. With softness the light flickered, unhurried, as though their breathing's rhythm it was matching. Briefly they spoke, their voices low, commenting on nothing more than the night's calm quality. Quickly the words faded, leaving behind a shared silence that felt complete in nature. To move away neither felt the need. Beside her he remained, his presence quiet and steady in character. No reason to step back, she felt, no reason to step closer either. Its balance, naturally the space between them held, shaped by trust rather than thought's direction. Eventually deepening came to the night, and stillness grew over the village. Without hesitation, without reluctance, they turned toward their separate paths. No sense of ending lived in the parting. Only the gentle closing another shared day received. As it always did, sleep came softly, shaped by routine and quiet satisfaction. Untroubled and complete, the world rested. Within the slow, unbroken flow that the days provided, their connection continued its growth. Not toward urgency, not toward declaration, but toward something steady and enduring, formed through presence, patience, and the calm acceptance of time as it achieved its passing. Into a quieter stretch of days the village entered, when steady but light work was, and a softness the air carried that into the body settled with ease. Slowly mornings opened, gently evenings closed, and wide and unhurried the space between them felt. No longer like something moving forward did time feel, like something resting it felt. Without marking it, they continued sharing this rhythm. With only a glance exchanged, some days passed, a brief moment of shared presence before to their own tasks each returned. With longer stretches together, other days unfolded, walking familiar paths or resting in the same quiet places. Nothing received planning, nothing needed to be. How natural it had become to consider her presence without thinking of it as consideration, he noticed. Often nearby she was when he paused. Without effort their paths aligned when he moved. Something within him that had long remained guarded, the ease of it softened, though closely he did not examine it, no need existed. The same quiet steadiness accompanying her days she felt. From the world around her, it did not distract her, the sense of companionship. Instead, her awareness of it, the wind's sound, the texture stone beneath her hand carried, the warmth of light as across the ground it shifted, seemed to deepen. Fuller life felt without becoming louder. Near the edge of the village, they stood together one afternoon, as slowly overhead clouds gathered, watching the sky's gentle darkening. Cool and still the air was, holding rain's promise without urgency. Neither spoke. Settled, the shared silence felt, as though for them it had been waiting. light and scattered. When the first drops fell away, they did not hurry. Quietly they stood, through them letting the moment pass. The ground, the rain softened, the colors of stone and earth deepened, and then, as gently as it had arrived, it faded. Together afterward they walked back, their steps slow, fresh and clean, the air around them. With its familiar calm, the village greeted them, unchanged and welcoming in nature. That evening, as once more night settled, between them a quiet understanding existed that had not existed before, not spoken, not examined, but present nonetheless. More than shared time, being together had become. Shared rest it had become. Easily sleep came, shaped by the gentle repetition of days that asked for nothing more than presence's offering. And within that rest, within the steady, unbroken calm that village life provided, the bond between them continued its deepening, patiently, quietly, rooted firmly in stillness, trust, and the simple certainty of being near one another. Into a pattern so gentle that barely like a pattern at all it felt, the days settled. In exactly the same way, nothing repeated, yet familiar, everything felt. Quietly the village breathed, its rhythm holding steady as the seasons continued their slow, almost imperceptible shifts. Performance. In the predictability of one another's presence they found comfort. No longer something noticed consciously, it was. Beneath awareness it existed, steady and reassuring. Balanced the world felt when near they were, and slightly quieter when not they were. No longer like someone passing through, he felt. Into memory the road had faded, its pull softened by the calm that here surrounded him, by something more settled, more grounded. The sense of movement that had once defined his life had been replaced. No longer like waiting did being still feel, complete it felt. A similar sense of completion she felt, though a name to it she did not give. Always full her days had been, shaped by purpose and familiarity. Now an added depth they carried, a quiet richness that did not alter her routines but enriched them in their performance. More present each moment felt, more anchored. Along a familiar path beneath a darkening sky they walked together one evening as the village prepared for rest. Cool the air was, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke within it. Slow their steps remained, unmeasured, aligned without thought's guidance. Near the place where gently back toward the village the path curved, they paused. Around them the land rested, open and calm. Into quiet tones the sky deepened, faint above the first stars were. Close they stood, not touching, yet fully of one another aware. Then a subtle shift existed, not sudden, not dramatic, but clear in its presence. Between them a shared understanding settled, deeper than before. No longer just comfort, being together was. Belonging it was. Neither spoke. Unnecessary words would have felt, perhaps even intrusive, to be shaped or explained. The moment did not ask, only to be allowed to exist it asked. Together they did so. When back toward the village they turned, their movements slow and unhurried in nature. With its familiar quiet, the night welcomed them. With softness, doors closed, fires released brightness. Without resistance, sleep arrived. Within that night's calm, within the steady unfolding of days that continued passing without demand, their connection held firm, quiet, patient, and deeply rooted in shared presence, carrying them gently forward without the need for direction or urgency's push. Beneath a sky that rarely drew attention to itself forward, the village moved, changing slowly, quietly, without sharp contrasts presence. Long but light days felt, filled with small motions and gentle pauses. Forward nothing urged itself, behind nothing fell. Comfortably where it was, time rested. More of that time now they shared, not through intention but through habit that had formed without effort's requirement. A place where often together they stood, A place once passed without notice became the quiet awareness of another nearby, a moment that once belonged to solitude now included. Without discussion, without recognition, these shifts happened, settling naturally into their day's shape. More closely listening, he found himself to the village, to the land, to her presence within it. Deeper, the calm that surrounded him felt more complete. No longer stirred the restlessness that had once lived beneath his movements. No longer like a pause between journeys did being here feel. Like arrival it felt. The same quiet grounding taking hold she felt. Steady the world around her felt familiar and gently affirmed by shared presence. Not as something arriving did she think of change. Instead, that something had aligned, she felt, that more fully into itself life had settled. Near the edge of the village, they stood together one morning as a faint chill the air carried, and softly the light arrived. Low across the ground, mist rested, blurring the distance and softening shapes. Hushed, the world felt, held in a brief moment of stillness before the day's beginning. They did not speak. To do so they did not need. Complete standing there together felt as though nothing more to the moment could be added without its balance receiving disturbance. Slowly the mist lifted, beneath it revealing the familiar landscape, unchanged and enduring. As the day achieved unfolding, naturally apart they moved, each drawn back into work and routine's rhythm. Yet of one another the awareness lingered, quiet and steady, through the hours threading gently. Without seeking again, they met that evening, walking the same path, as though by something beneath conscious thought guided. Slowly the light faded, the air cooling as night's approach came. Easily their steps aligned, shaped by repetition rather than intention's force. In silence they walked, comfortable and unhurried, no longer tentative. The closeness between them felt settled, it felt secure, rooted in time shared and days quietly lived. When fully night arrived, to the village they returned, each toward their own rest, turning without hesitation. No sense of separation in the parting existed, only the gentle continuation of what already had been established. Once more, easily sleep came, shaped by calm days and untroubled thoughts. And within that rest, within the steady unfolding that ordinary life provided, the connection between them remained, quiet, enduring, and deeply woven into the village's rhythm, carrying them forward without need for words, plans, or haste. In a gentle pause to exist, the village seemed as though a rhythm requiring no adjustment it had found. Without urgency, days passed. Without weight, nights arrived. Balanced, the world felt steady and quietly complete. Within this balance, with increasing ease, they moved. No longer like something newly formed did their presence beside one another feel. Established, it felt, grounded, woven into ordinary life's shape. No moment they could point to as a beginning existed, no single change that marked a turning. Simply this way it had become. How often naturally toward where she was his attention settled, he noticed, not out of searching but out of familiarity. Like a fixed point within the day, her presence felt, something reliable and calm. No effort to remain near her it required, no thought to stay it required. The same quiet certainty accompanying her movements she felt when she worked, when she rested, when the familiar paths she walked. An underlying steadiness existed that did not fade. Like standing within something solid, being near him felt, something that held without pressing. Near the edge of the square, a simple meal they shared one afternoon. As beneath a pale sky the village rested, little conversation existed. Gently the sounds around them, soft voices, distant movement, the occasional call a bird made, filled the space, for nothing more than presence. The moment asked. Where they were, they remained when finishing came, neither eager to move on. Comfortably time stretched, unmeasured, settled. The stillness between them felt unbroken. As evening's approach came, the air cooled and the light achieved softening. Once more together they walked, following a path worn smooth by years of passage. Slow their steps were, unhurried, shaped by habit rather than intention. At a quiet turn in the path, they paused. In shadow, the land around them rested, calm and enduring. Slightly closer now he stood, not deliberately, not with intention, but because natural to do so it felt. Away she did not move, familiar the closeness felt, accepted without thought. Between them no words passed. None received need. Its balance the moment held, steady and complete. Eventually, back towards the village they turned, side by side, walking as fully around them. Night settled. The familiar quiet welcomed them home. With softness, doors closed, fires released brightness. Without resistance, rest arrived. Within that night's calm, within the steady unfolding of days that continued without demand, the bond between them remained, deepening not through action or declaration, but through stillness shared, trust given, and the gentle certainty of belonging. And time, unhurried and patient in nature, continued carrying them forward, allowing what had formed so quietly to settle ever deeper into their lives' rhythm. As though something carefully preserved it were, its calm the village held passed from one day to the next without loss. Easily beneath the sky the land rested, and with gentle certainty within it life continued. Suddenly nothing arrived. Abruptly nothing left. Simply everything remained. More naturally now to share the day's quiet spaces they began, without noticing when its starting had occurred. A bench warmed by the afternoon light, near the trees, a shaded place. Beside a doorway a moment as the evening settled. These became shared pauses, softly woven into their day's fabric. A growing ease in these shared moments he felt, a sense of being exactly where needed he was without effort or intention. To reach him as well, the stillness that surrounded her seemed settling his thoughts, quieting any lingering sense of movement. Smaller in a comforting way, the world felt contained and whole, the same gentle grounding she experienced. Steady the presence beside her felt familiar, offering quiet reassurance without demand. No longer like a series of tasks alone did her days feel. Like a continuous flow they felt, softened by shared awareness and unspoken understanding. Near the edge of the fields they stood together one evening, as slowly behind the hills the sun lowered. Long across the ground the light stretched, touching the grass and stone alike, then slowly receding. Cool the air was, calm, carrying the faint sounds of the village, settling behind them. In silence there they remained, watching the gradual shift of light to shadow. Unhurried the moment felt complete. Close enough now he stood that lightly their sleeves brushed, when between them the breeze moved. Brief the contact was, almost unnoticeable, yet a quiet significance it carried. Away neither moved. Like that they stayed until fully the light faded, until in evening tones the world rested. When back toward the village they turned. Side by side they walked, their steps aligned, their pace slow and unmeasured. Gently the night welcomed them. Softly lamps glowed, low fires burned. Once more the familiar quiet settled. Easily sleep came, shaped by calm days and steady presence. And within that rest, within the quiet continuation that village life provided, further the connection between them deepened. No longer just shared time, but shared belonging, rooted firmly in patience, trust, and the gentle certainty of being together. Without urgency onward, time continued, allowing what between them had formed to grow at its own pace. Unspoken, unforced, and deeply at ease within ordinary day's stillness. With the same gentle certainty to unfold, the days continued, each one resting comfortably within the next. No longer like a place defined by boundaries or direction did the village feel. Contained it felt, complete, as though within it everything existed exactly where it should. Without drawing attention overhead, the sky passed, and steady beneath their feet the land remained. More moments that required no structure they shared, together without reason, sitting quietly while around them the day moved, standing. Not empty these moments felt. In a quiet, sustaining way, full they felt, as though rest rather than stimulation they offered. No longer like an event did being together feel, like a state of being it felt. How quieter over all his thoughts had grown, he noticed. Into stillness, the constant movement that had once lived beneath his awareness had eased. No longer a sense of waiting for something else to begin existed. Sufficient the days themselves felt. Stillness feel natural rather than imposed. The presence beside him made deeper within her routines the same calm settle she felt. Lighter tasks felt, not because change they had, but because no longer alone they were carried. Even when apart they were, softly lingered the awareness of shared time, like warmth that remained after the fire had dimmed. Toward the forest's edge, walking together, they found themselves one afternoon, as beneath a pale, unmoving sky, the village rested. Quietly, the trees stood, barely stirring their leaves. Familiar, the path beneath their feet was, shaped smooth by years of passage. Without destination they walked, guided only by ease. Settled and unremarkable, the silence between them felt, as though always it had existed. At times, lightly their shoulders brushed as they moved, the contact brief and natural. Neither reacted, expected the closeness felt. Where the path narrowed, they paused, gently around them the forest opening. Through the branches above, light filtered, in soft patterns on the ground resting. Cool and still the air was, carrying a sense of deep rest. Together there they stood, slowly breathing, neither toward the other turning, yet fully aware of the shared space. Balanced, the moment felt complete, without the need for movement or speech. To rest alongside them, time seemed. Eventually, back toward the village they turned, their steps unhurried, their pace aligned. As natural as the walk out, the walk back felt, a gentle closing of the afternoon. As it always did, evening arrived, calm and unannounced. The village achieved settling. Lamps received lighting. Voices underwent softening. The familiar quiet returned. Once more easily that night sleep came. The mind achieved rest. The body received relaxation. And within that rest, within the steady continuation that ordinary life provided, firm the bond between them held. Quiet, deep and unforced, rooted in shared presence and the calm certainty of belonging. Without insistence, forward time continued, allowing what had grown so gently to deepen further, carried by patience, trust, and the enduring stillness of the days they shared. Within itself the village rested, unchanged by time's passing. As though how to remain still while gently through it days moved, it had learned. A steady calm the air carried, and with quiet acceptance, the land responded. Unsettled, nothing felt. Unfinished, nothing felt. To sharing the quiet without question they had grown used. No longer attention or adjustment did being near one another require. Natural it felt, expected like each morning light's return or night's soft closing. Without effort their presence fit together, shaped by patience rather than intention. How often in small harmony now they moved, he noticed. To match another, a step slowed, just long enough for both to rest within it, a pause held. Not deliberate, these movements were. On their own they emerged, guided by a shared sense of ease. The same gentle alignment she felt. Often there he was when she turned. Too he waited when she waited. No urgency in this closeness existed, no need to interpret it. Quietly it existed, asking nothing, offering steadiness. Along a familiar path once more together they walked one evening, as slowly the light faded and the village prepared for rest. Gradually the sky darkened, deepening into soft shades that stillness invited. Cool the air was, calm, carrying the distant sound of night settling in. Close enough now that connected their steps felt, side by side they moved, though consciously neither adjusted. Unbroken, the silence between them was comfortable, complete. No uncertainty it carried, At a gentle curve in the path, they paused. Behind them the village rested, quiet and distant. Before them still the land lay, open and calm. Then before, slightly closer, he stood, his presence steady and unassuming. Where she was, she remained, her awareness resting with ease within the shared space. After a long moment, without looking, she reached out with quiet certainty, her hand finding his. Simple the gesture was, unremarkable in its ease. Together, naturally, their hands rested, without tension, without surprise. Settled, the contact felt, as though always there it had belonged. That way they remained, unmoving, allowing without shaping it further the moment to exist. No rush to speak existed, no need to explain. In the quiet, steady, the connection held. When finally back toward the village, they turned, just as naturally their hands separated without reluctance. Together on they walked, unchanged the calm between them, deepened only by shared understanding. Once more gently the night welcomed them. Lights released brightness, with softness doors closed. Without resistance, rest arrived. Within the steady unfolding of days and nights, within the calm rhythm that village life provided, what between them had formed continued its growth, unforced, unspoken, and deeply rooted in trust, presence, and the quiet certainty of being together. Without urgency forward, time moved, gently along carrying them, allowing what had settled so naturally to remain, to deepen, and to endure. A softer weight the days that followed carried, as though into place something unseen had settled gently. The change nothing in the village marked. The same paths received walking, the same work received doing, the same quiet each evening returned. Yet beneath the familiar rhythm, a steadiness existed that felt newly complete. Of what had passed between them they did not speak. No need existed. Quietly, the understanding rested, carried forward without attention. When they met, warmer their presence beside one another felt, more assured, yet no different in shape. Undisturbed, the calm they shared remained. How naturally again his hand found hers in small, unremarkable moments he noticed. When at dusk together they walked, when beside a field they paused, when gently around them the night settled, without hesitation their hands met. No thought the contact required. Like part of the rhythm they had already learned, it felt. Without question this closeness she accepted. Steady the warmth of his hand felt, grounding, offering quiet reassurance without demand. No rush within it existed, no urgency to move beyond what already existed. Complete on its own, the simplicity of the gesture felt. Much the same their days continued. When it happened to be shared, work was shared. Comfortable silence remained, few and unadorned. Words when spoken were, not through change but through consistency. The presence between them deepened. Near a low fire together they sat one evening. As into rest the village settled, and gently the air cooled. Slowly the flames moved, casting soft light across their faces and the ground beneath them. Still the night felt attentive as though listening. Close they sat, their shoulders nearly touching, together, easily their hands resting. Quietly the fire crackled, offering warmth without disturbance. For nothing more than stillness the moment asked. Slightly toward him she leaned, her movement unhurried, natural, just enough to support the closeness he adjusted, his presence steady and calm. That way they remained, slowly breathing, allowing around them the world to rest. No thoughts of what might come next existed, no shaping of the future. Sufficient the present felt. Complete in its quiet depth, a place of rest rather than direction being together had become. When dimmed the fire and deepened the night, they rose and returned toward the village. Slow their steps were, aligned, guided by familiarity rather than intention. Gentle the parting that followed felt, unmarked by distance. What connected them did not weaken when apart they stepped. Once more, easily sleep arrived. The mind achieved rest. The body received relaxation. And within that rest, within the steady continuation of days that flowed without demand, firm the bond between them held, quiet, enduring, and deeply rooted in shared presence. Softly on time moved, allowing what had formed so patiently to remain, to deepen, and to carry them forward within the calm, unbroken rhythm that village life provided. Even deeper into its own stillness to settle, the village seemed, as though the quiet harmony that had taken hold it recognized. With gentle certainty, days arrived and departed, leaving no sharp impressions behind. Softer the air felt, more patient the light, calmer in a way that felt enduring rather than fleeting the nights. Without drawing attention to it together through these days, they continued moving. No longer like something that needed awareness did their closeness feel. Naturally it existed, woven into the rhythm of work, rest, and quiet movement. When side by side they walked, without thought their pace matched. When they paused, to both of them, the pause belonged. A steady sense of ease that no longer surprised him, he felt. Part of his daily awareness, the feeling of being rooted, of no longer drifting, had become. No longer like a place he occupied did the village feel, like a place that held him it felt. And within that holding, central her presence felt, grounding, quietly essential. The same calm certainty shaping her days she felt, rather than changed. The familiarity of her life had deepened. The routines remained, but warmer they felt, steadier, supported by shared presence. A quiet comfort that into her thoughts settled easily, the sense of being understood without explanation brought. Near the well together, they stood one morning, as beneath a pale sky the village woke, cool and still the air around them. Softly the water reflected the light, unbroken. In silence they worked, their movements unhurried, practiced, aligned, ordinary and complete. All at once the moment felt. Towards the edge of the fields together they walked later that day. Before them the land stretched open, resting quietly beneath the sky. Gently through the grass the breeze moved, carrying a calm that stillness invited. Without deciding to stop, they stopped, standing side by side, naturally one another, their hands finding. For a long while there they remained, slowly breathing, allowing exactly as it was the world to remain. Settled, the closeness felt, unquestioned. No sense of anticipation existed, no desire to move beyond the moment. Sufficient what they shared felt, complete in its quiet depth. As the light shifted and toward evening the day leaned, together back toward the village they turned. Slow their steps were, even their pace, shaped by familiarity rather than intent. Like a gentle closing the return felt, a natural end to another unhurried day. Once more night arrived, calm and unannounced. Low fires burned, voices underwent softening. The village achieved rest. Easily sleep came, shaped by days that asked little and offered much. And within that rest, within the steady continuation that ordinary life provided, the bond between them remained, quiet, patient, and deeply rooted, growing not through change or declaration, but through presence, trust, and the enduring stillness that shared time brings. Without insistence onward, time continued, allowing what had formed so gently to deepen further, held safely within the calm, unbroken rhythm of the world they now shared.